All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. I am so excited to have my special guest with me for our Wealth Being Show, how to generate profit while generating impact. And there's no other person than my special guest today can share with you of what that really means. With his life work, he has been an active practitioner of traditional Western herbalism for 40 years, helping tens of thousands of clients. He practices the traditional herbal medicine descending from Europe and also Anglo-American and Native American heritage as well. And so with me today, I'm super excited. What a beautiful name too, to go with what he does for a living. Matthew Wood. Welcome, Matthew.
Well, thank you. Yes, great. So I'm really delighted to do a program on the business of being an herbalist because I've never been asked about that. And I didn't start out as a business person or businessman. My dad was a professor at the University of Minnesota in special education, which was a new field in those days. And I just thought I'd become a professor. It just was like what was natural to me. And I'm sure glad I didn't. It's so nice not to be in a field regulated by the government. So that just happens because they don't like herbalism that much. So it is not regulated either in education. There's very few state or there's no federal state educational places where you could get an education in this field. In Britain, even they're getting rid of their, I don't know, they call them federal, but they're government universities that have, they're not getting rid of the universities, they're just cutting the herbal curriculum out. But so at any rate, I had to make a big, 180, 100, 360 degree switch to in order to be myself. I wasn't expecting this. And but from age 13, that was my mission in life. My inspiration was to be an herbalist. And I didn't, and it was, I would call it a spiritual calling. And I would say everybody should really follow their spiritual calling, whatever it may be, and not judge it, really that's like your foundation that you got to get right. Once you have that right, you you can build anything, and it may take a while, and it may have to be a hobby at first or a sideshow, but you will slowly work towards that. And first, quite frankly, I would say here I had inspiration what I wanted to do in my life when I was 13, but it took all my 20s, I would say, from age 18, leaving school, high school, and then through college and all the way, probably I started working in the herb store at age 29, I think. But so it was about 10 years of kind of focusing and getting, what am I doing? And I was fortunate that someone hired me in my field. So somehow felt that how I had a connection to it. That was Bob Gallagher, the owner of Present Moment Herbs in Minneapolis. And I've seen that sometimes in some students. It's like, your destiny is to be an herbalist, and don't fight it here, and I'll try to help you. Other people, it's not as clear, but still they persist on and they work, and that becomes apparent. That becomes their occupation. And I've both been pleased and amazed at the people who have succeeded in the field. Sometimes people have not. It's sometimes difficult to do, but there are some insights and ideas that do help. So first you get your vision clear, and then you pursue it, and then the doors will open. I have to say that because that happened to me. And the world, how's it? It meets you where you are. As your ship is sailing across the ocean, you find the island somehow, even though it's out there and you don't have a map, maybe. So at any rate, so I started work at the herb store. It was just 1 day a week. And because Bob had custody of his son, and it was kind of hard. It was every other Thursday and every other Saturday. So I had to have a part-time job that could accommodate that as well. And I limped along. I wasn't very wealthy then, but you're trying to do build up something that's, your vision. Some visions are harder than others to to pursue, but you have to make allowances for that. So then, he needed, as business increased for him, he needed more people. I guess you could say for him, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Because there weren't any herb stores then at that time, and there were some health food stores. There was another health food store that did have some herbs, yeah, but his was specifically an herb store, and it kind of met. He was even by that time he was an old hippie, and so he kind of had met that cultural milieu. But he very consciously. This is some lessons I learned from him. He very consciously set that herb store up right next to what in those days was, what do they call that? Redlining, where a district is like on that side black, on this side white. There also could be Native American communities in Minneapolis, and but he set it close to the red line as he could get because he wanted a diverse population, and indeed, and so over the years there's been a strong white, black, and Native American clientele there in that store, and he even ended up marrying into the Native community, so that changed some things too. But and it's funny, and then he had one older son, but then he had some kids, and a guy, just a delightful guy, Dwayne. He wanted to work in the herb store, a young black guy, and Bob hired him first as a babysitter, and then after a year he hired him in the store, and that also helped with the very definitely the black clientele really appreciate having uh, having someone like that. And and it's nothing like having your babysitter working for working for your store. Now that he's dead and his daughter has taken over the store, Dwayne is such a you know dedicated employee would be an understatement. So nothing like having your babysitter, upholding your business.
I no, I think it's great. And I think that ultimately your mentor sounds like this herbal store owner he had a vision. You mentioned that, right? Like you mentioned needing to be really clear on your vision and just working towards it. And I think that's amazing. And I feel like as much as we talk about it as entrepreneurs and business owners, having a clear vision is super important. It is just not something that we get to really focus on as we really continue on. I feel like I have to always check in with myself. Now I have a habit on an annual basis of checking in with myself. Is this part of my vision? And am I working towards it? So that's great. And can you share with us, just because you've been in this business for so long now, before it was a thing,
Yeah.
how's your practice now different in terms of what it is that you do for your clients now versus what you used to do before? I mean, since it has been now 40 years time spanned.
Yeah, well, let's see. First, we just were running an herb store, which meant that people come in. One insight he had, and this is interesting, he said, well, you can't just do herbs by itself. You got to do herbs and something else, herbs and books. So it's present moment herbs and books in South Minneapolis. And that is true, that the two support each other. And so sometimes but he was interested in books too. So you couldn't do that if you weren't interested in books. And I mean interested enough that he, when a book got sold, he or the shop clerk wrote it down. And I mean, you really had to keep track and, have everything there. And he had to be studying what books were being published and stuff. So he wore two hats, and that worked. And I would say there are other subjects, you could do this part culinary, part I've always thought like a coffee shop or herb tea place would be quite amenable also. And I haven't seen that enough. And I'm just going to digress onto different ways you can do this vision and get back to what you were talking about. Keeping the vision. To my surprise, some of my most successful students have been people who lived in the country who had a small farm, and especially people who had vegetables or had, the lamb shop. It would be one place, central Minnesota. She's got a business. She sells lamb. And now, not everybody's going to want to do this, but I'm just saying she does that, and she has her herb school and practice there as well. And people in the country have done quite well. And teaching country skills is very popular. So that, when I was young, there really wasn't anybody formally doing, homestead skills or something. You had to kind of read books. And by this point, and there was because there was all this back to the land hippies and stuff like that. Well, at any rate, so I know of people that are teaching homestead skills and gardening and farming and herbalism. One thing I did notice, right, that is true for me is that I found you had to be a teacher, a consultant, and a provider of the and a maker of herbs, which is what most of us love in the field.
Mhm.
Now, in standard medicine, all the way back to Hippocrates, you can't be the practitioner and the provider, the pharmacist and the doctor. I would say a lot of herbalists kind of break that. But for the FDA, you can't make the claim, which is the doctor part, and produce the substance. I don't produce herbs, so therefore, for the regular big market or anything, I'm always doing it for myself and clients and stuff. But even that, I've gotten a little tired of packaging things and sending it off. It's the one thing I've let slip. But at any rate, so yeah, you do there. That's kind of the whole field. And also, some people want to teach more how to make them. Some people less, how to use them, how to grow them, etc. So you also, like you said, you touch in with what I want to do. What is it I really want to do? And so I enjoyed the making less, and with the years, that's gone by the wayside. But on the other hand, for my professional life, I had to learn how these things looked, how they tasted, what they were like in the wild. I actually did take botany. I do have to say that in my 20s, I took botany classes, and that was important to be able to identify the plants and feel confident. And in Minnesota, where I started, there's like 3 poisonous plants, poison ivy and 2 things that'll kill you.
Yeah.
and you got to know those, and and then all the other things, and that botany that did help me start that way. So some education contributed, but my education was a lot self-motivated and self-directed and picked up, and it was hard to find people in those days to study with. And in those days, and this model still works. I don't know. I'll have to let you interrupt me in a moment here, but the model that really works was self-education, going to different conferences, different books, different people all around. Now we have schools more, but I would still say, much as I have my own school, go study with different people to learn this art, because it is an art, not just a science. And that's from medicine, where we're all teaching the same thing. We all come out as robots for that one thing. This is, as Bob said, and here I will stop for a moment. As Bob said, back in that first year, he quoted Chairman Mao, "Let 100 flowers blossom," meaning all herbalists are different. Let them all blossom.
Yes, and that is ultimately my intention with with this show. Is I'm teaching building wealth from many angles, and it's not just when we hear wealth, the assumption is that monetary wealth, and that is not the only thing. I mean, I'm speaking about wealth from an impact standpoint. I'm speaking about wealth from creating that space where you can do what you love and follow your passion and really answer your callings type of way to build wealth. And I love that. And there's diversity. There's nothing like that as much as we like to, I feel like there are so many collective or groups that like to talk about diversity. I feel like it's not as I guess practice, like I mean, we talk about being different and things like that, but we're not really being inclusive for what it's worth. And especially with herbal medicine, I feel like everyone can have a different way of sharing the art, as you say, based on science, from what we have discovered. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for really shedding light on what's truly possible if someone chooses to follow their path, especially in herbalism, because you've been doing it for 40 years and you did it when not too many people knew about it. So not to mention, I feel like people are more open to alternatives more than ever before, especially in the last 2 years. I feel like I have been finding different ways to keep myself healthy, so that way I don't have to worry about X, Y, and Z, and consider the pandemic, the COVID. So it's great that you're sharing that. And so lastly, do you have any parting remarks for the audience in terms of it could be a noble job, right? Like being herbalist and doing things to really help make a difference in people's lives. But how important it is also to sustain yourself so you can continue doing what you love, right? Because ultimately the profit is meaning you have to be able to sustain yourself so that you can continue to create impact.
Yes, well, you do have to be practical, and you also have to be patient with this. I had a friend who she had, 8 students one summer. She didn't think that was enough. She canceled a class. I mean, she was actually a trust fund baby. It's like you got to think differently. You got to think in 3 years, I'll have 12 people or 20 people or 9 people, and just keep on, or 5 years. I saw that how slowly it did develop up, and that means it's good when you're younger, or if you have that extra money like she did. I just feel, yeah, you got to follow that. I'm going to share. Are we going right to the hour, or do we go on for?
We're wrapping up. We're wrapping up. Yep. So yes, please share. Yeah, what you have.
So when I bought my herb farm and I moved out there, and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to pay the mortgage? And I
Mhm.
was employed, and I was on a contract for deed. It would have been hard to get a bank loan. And I had this vision, which was amazing, which your people, our listeners can watch and not believe or believe, but I saw how to make money. And I saw that money was like a substance up here. It was on the right side of the right eye, kind of, how you inventory, like it's called neuro-linguistic programming, like inventory. Money was up there, and it
Uh-huh.
would come down through a little chute, which was like your chisel, as my boss would say, as Bob would have said, which was your calling, and it would come to you, and you can't have any judgments about money. Money is not good or bad. It just is. It just serves, and that's so important. And it showed me it's like pebbles by the side of the sea. It's like not, it's just no different. And so we have to get over that, our attachment to money, and then we can tune into it. I actually believe, and I always felt provided for every single month, every single year. And then finally I started to make too much money. Uh, It's like, what do I do with it? Yeah. So, okay, that's a good point to end, huh?
Yes, but that's ultimately is though what you said is so key to it all, is that so many entrepreneurs is so bogged down to I have to make this much, I have to make this much, but what they are not doing is what you said, not really giving themselves credit for progressing year after year and knowing that they're on the right path, and then detaching from the outcome of making this much money and being open to what's available. Like you said, then it was like you have more than you
Yeah.
need. So yeah, no, it's a great reminder. And again, like I keep going back to the fact that you've been in this for 40 years is it's very respectable, is because not too many people know it from a very young age, and you did, and you continue with it, so it's super inspirational. So thank you so much for being here with us. Yes. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for continuing on inspiring all of us to follow our love and passion for what it is that we want to create in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I should say, Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism would be my connection here for people.
Yes.
So
Thank you very much.
very much. We'll talk later. Bye.
Thank you.
Mhm.